Hey folks, how's it going? This is Shane from Performance EV. Welcome to the channel and welcome to our latest video. Today we're going to do a bit of a project update on the kind of two aspects of the project. One being the inverter and motor, and the other being the car that we're trying to get ready for taking the electric motor. So we're continuing to progress the two aspects of our project, the motor and the car it's going to go into. But before kind of go into a specific update, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the project and what we're planning to do, because I realized I haven't actually spoken about it much in these videos. So what we've got is a Nissan Leaf motor and inverter and a 21-year-old Porsche 911. We're trying to make them meet up. Now, there have been some comments in the comment section of some of the previous videos very validly asking, will that really work? Is the Leaf going to have enough power for the Porsche? And to be honest, I don't know, but that's half the fun. So the way I'm approaching this project is a bit like a lot of, I guess, modern software projects. We're going for a minimum viable product and then we're going to iterate through it. So first job is just try and get an electric motor working in the Porsche. And then the next job is try and build up both performance and distance. So the Porsche itself, in its current setup, if it had a working engine, puts out about 320 horsepower, so about 200 kilowatts. The Nissan Leaf motor, it's a little bit less than that. It's 80 kilowatts, or about 110 horsepower. Now, obviously, there's a bit of a discrepancy there. But what's worth bearing in mind is that the use of electric motors in cars is new, and from what I've seen based on conversations in some of the electric car forums and some of the other people's YouTube channels, is the manufacturers are building contingency into these motors, and they're actually capable potentially of a lot more than can be done. So first job, we're going to see what can we get out of the Leaf motor. Can we get it up to that 200 odd kilowatts that the Porsche needs to be able to perform the way it did with its electric motor? Now, I don't think we'll get there with the first iteration. So the way we want to go about this first phase is we're using the standard Nissan Leaf inverter with the standard Nissan Leaf inverter logic board. We're going to try and control this through the CAN messages. I think it's very unlikely we'll find a way to fool this enough to get it to pump out more than the prescribed power of the Leaf, but who knows. Beyond that, I've got another logic board which I haven't built yet, but I've got all the components for, which is one of the Hubner open source inverter power logic boards. Now this one I'm keeping to one side for the moment. I know there are quite a few people who are working on this with the Leaf, gradually working through the different applications of it, getting things like getting it working with the permanent magnet motors. But that's for a future phase, and I think we'll first get it working with the existing logic board, then we'll try it with the new logic board, but retaining the rest of the power stage from the Leaf, see what power we can get out of it there. Obviously there are going to be limitations. There's going to be limitations to how much power can actually go through those IGBTs. And if that doesn't get us close enough, then we'll probably look to build a completely bespoke inverter where we choose the components for the power stage and can therefore pump out potentially more power. And you know what? If all that doesn't work, then we'll have at least fully tested a Nissan Leaf power unit. We can take that out, save it for another project, and look at getting something like a Tesla rear drive unit, which, as everyone knows, does pump out quite a lot of power, even in its standard formation. But anyway, that's the way we're going about this project. So first step is just try and be able to control the motor and be able to drive the car in an electric form, and then we'll look at upping the power and actually meeting the name of this channel. So then let's take a look at where we are with the project. So at the moment, we've got the Nissan Leaf inverter sitting open, currently with the CAN wires from it hooked up into an Arduino Nano with a CAN bus shield, and then a separate system for controlling the flow of power into the capacitor. So at the moment, we've got two lead acid batteries. One we've been using for the 12 volt power, and one for the actually just trying to get a bit of power into the capacitor. So what we're going to do is, I've got some more of these batteries, and we're going to basically create a pack for our bench testing with multiples of these wired in series to increase the voltage, and to get the sufficient voltage into the capacitor that the logic board will actually start responding. At the same time, I've been working on some software, and I'm going to have to continue to work on that, which will try and send the CAN messages to the inverter to control it. So it's kind of two different types of CAN messages that the inverter needs to receive. One is some pretty set messages that tell it that everything's okay, the car's working fine, and then the other are to instruct the amount of power that it needs to deliver out through the far side of the IGBTs. So once we get that set up, then we will be wiring the three-phase output to the three-phase input on the electric motor, and we'll start to spin it on the bench. Once we've got a little bit of control of that, then we'll look at putting the motor into the car and just do some very basic testing, probably on a probably with the car up on jack stand, so it's not going anywhere. We're not risking any lives if it suddenly decides to put max power through the wheels. Well, that's kind of the bench piece. So I've got the additional batteries, and I need to start building out the battery pack, and then at the same time as that, I'm working on the software for to feed through the CAN bus shield into the very limited CAN network that we have currently, to control the inverter by sending messages to the logic board. So that's kind of the motor side of things. Let's go take a look at the car. So here we are in the car. Just want to take you through where things are with this. So obviously in the last video we tried to do a service on it and found out some things about the engine I'd rather not know about, and also ran into some obstacles in terms of doing the more basic things around brake service, things that will be needed for the car anyway, irrespective of what type of motor it has in it. So just to take you through, I guess, the car itself, obviously there are some issues with it that we'll need to work through, but that's to be expected when you try and find the cheapest one available on the market at the time. Still represents good value, but I think we're going to have to look and see if the engine is worth working on now, or better to just put to one side, do the electric project, and then take a look at. So yeah, so I guess maybe this is a bit of one of those, everything that's wrong with my car. So we're in the interior, inside the car, and obviously the interior, as I've said before, not a big fan of the colour. So I have managed to find a black interior on eBay, everything except a dash and steering wheel. So I've got that ready to install here. So at some point I'll probably take out most of this tan interior, replace it a black one, and that should make me much happier with the car. In terms of issues inside, actually there aren't that many. All the dials seem to work. There's a stereo in place, though the speakers are a bit crackly, so we're probably just going to have to work our way through the wiring on that. It is a 6 CD changer, so that means there will be some interesting CDs to see what the previous owner listened to. Probably the biggest issue we've got on the inside, and I guess it isn't really just the inside, is getting the passenger door open. At the moment, neither the out nor inside door handles will open the door. I can hear it locking and unlocking with the central locking, but just actuating the actual latch isn't working. So we're going to have to try and take off some of the trim from inside the car and see if we can't get a look at what's happening and just get the door open and then replace whatever components are needed. Inside the rest of the car, it's actually very good. The rear wiper motor, or the rear wiper, doesn't run at the moment, so we're going to have to see, is that a motor problem, is it a relay problem? That's not a major issue. So then if we hop out of the car, take a look around. Obviously, as we saw on the previous video, we now have the new discs and pads installed on the front right, but one of the caliper bolts there is broken. I had to drill it out, so I'm going to have to take that out off the hub and then look at getting some new caliper bolts. I might just replace all of them just as a sensible measure. On the rear, we finally got the huge spacer out, so that's I'm going to include that potentially in another video, or maybe in this one. And currently the caliper isn't back on because this is only loosely attached, as I still need to fix the drum brakes. I need to clean up the inside really well so that they move smoothly. Down on this side, likewise, we have moved the huge spacer, but again, the caliper bolts are causing me problems, so I'm going to have to do something about those. I probably can't really drill them out, there isn't really the space, so I might have to just cut some notches in them and try and tap them out using a hammer and a punch, and then we'll see what the front has to offer. I guess the two other things worth noting while we're looking at the wheels is, one, the wheels do need a bit of a refurb. Unfortunately, the previous owner's decision to have slightly narrower tyres on the car than necessary so they fit under the rims have meant the wheels themselves became a little bit more exposed than you'd normally like them to be to a bit of curb rash. The other thing is the choice of wheels. So I've yet to look these up on the internet, but these are Lansale LS588 UHPs on the rears in a 265/35 R18, and then up front we've got something a little bit more normal, both in its fit on the rim and the branding. So these are Continental Conti Sport contacts. These ones I think are a 255/45/18. Then we've got the engine. Obviously the engine has some issues. We're going to do a quick test see if there's any exhaust fumes in the coolant, which will give us an indication of potentially where the issue might be. Not a concrete one, but certainly give us some insight. Okay, so one of the problems that we appeared to have before when I was doing the service, I thought it was a coolant leak. I'm not so sure it is now. I think just the cap on the expansion tank wasn't put on tight enough, so once the water got above 100 it started to boil over. You're supposed to do these caps up pretty tight in order to prevent that, because the running temperature of the coolant system is about 190, so it needs to actually be under pressure. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to run a test to basically see if there is any exhaust gases coming through into the coolant, and that will give us an indication of what some of the potential problems could be. Okay, so for that we've got this test here. So this is a chemical which will go in, and basically as the temperature in the coolant system rises, it'll start to boil off and gas will pass through the liquid, and if it stays blue then we are all clear. If it changes colour then we know that there is exhaust gas getting into the coolant, which means that the cause of the intermix is probably inside the engine rather than one of the ancillary components. So I'm going to turn the engine on, let it heat up a bit, and just watch what happens to the blue liquid as gas bubbles out through it. Alright, so that was a little look around the car and running the first of a few tests that we're going to run on the engine to try and figure out where the coolant and oil are intermixing. That one actually went pretty well up until the point that the water got hot enough to overflow. There didn't seem to be any indications that there was exhaust gases. That's primarily used as a head gasket test, but also gives an indicator for certain types of cylinder head cracks and that sort of thing. I'm going to look to perform a compression test on each of the cylinders just to also see if there are any indications there. If those all look good, then this problem could be in a couple of the components that actually bolt onto the outside of the engine. So I might look at what needs to be done to those. But on the other hand, if we make really quick progress on getting the motor spinning and it's ready to go in the car before I manage to get this engine working, then we'll just drop the engine from the car and start looking at getting the motor in. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Do feel free to like, share, subscribe, click the notify icon if you want to be told when we've got new videos. We'll do a bit more of a hands-on one next time, and as soon as I get something concrete moving on the motor, we'll show you how that works. But anyway, till then, thanks for joining us, and I hope you've enjoyed it.